I just got this channel going, just started doing good, and now I'm gonna tank it all by saying unkind things about fighters that a lot of people like. I'm sorry, I just can't help myself.
Spoiler alert, virgins. June 9th, I'm getting 10 pounds of gold wrapped around my waist.
I don't leave my house because if I had to be around these people in public, I would probably get them charged.
God never made a tougher man than me, and my name hasn't come out of your mouth once.
No.
MMA is a sport that goes through waves. First came the wave of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players. Next came the ground and pounding wrestlers and the sprawling brawlers. Then we got the point scoring cardio machines and the Eastern European haymaker throwing grapplers. But somewhere in there, something went horribly awry. We got a glitch in the matrix, a mutation if you will, and we received a wave of fighters that weren't competing to be the best, they weren't competing for belts, and they weren't even really competing to win. They were competing for fame, that sweet clout, the ability to generate viral content. I call them edgelord fighters, and this movement began with a fighter that was always good enough to be called the guy that could potentially become #1, but not quite good enough to get there. Always the bridesmaid, but never the bride of mixed martial arts, Chael Sonnen. We'll get to him in a bit, but first, let's talk about someone that seems to have gained quite the fan base for himself lately. And I kind of get it, but I also kind of don't.
I think that Colby is doing a brilliant job of playing a bad guy like pro wrestling style, and I think he didn't used to do that early in his career. He was a hard-working guy who just went out there and fought his ass off, but people didn't give and they weren't giving him the credit that he deserves, and so he turned heel.
I agree with what Joe is saying here when he talks about Colby's changing character being extremely beneficial to his career. There's really no argument there. He went from somebody that nobody really cared about to somebody that a lot of people have very strong feelings about, be they negative or positive. What I don't agree with is Joe calling the man brilliant. Colby's trash talk can be compiled into one large cringe compilation. Actually, it has been made into a cringe compilation that currently sits at over 300,000 views on YouTube. The guy's not funny. I'm sorry. His delivery is terrible, he stutters, and he clearly pre-writes his material.
You know, it was kept a streak here is because, you know, a lot of people in England, you guys like to quote Shakespeare. In America, where I come from, we like to quote the great poet Lil Wayne. And just like Lil Wayne said, real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Great poet Lil Wayne, real G's moving silence like lasagna. That's funny? Who finds that funny? He delivered that line like a 55-year-old corporate sales manager on the first of the month meeting.
We like to quote the great poet Lil Wayne.
Pure unadulterated cringe, and I know a lot of people feel like he's doing that on purpose, but I don't. You can see in his head that he thought it would be funny, but he just couldn't execute it. But I can't just dismiss the fact that a decent amount of people do find him funny, and that lands us right into the main theme for this video. Edgelords. First of all, what are they? I think Urban Dictionary puts it best when it defines it as that one kid in Discord thinking he's cool by saying dumb. That's basically it. It's a person, usually below the legal drinking age, that says outrageous and crazy wacky things to get a reaction out of people. A common example would be saying positive things about a certain German man with a certain narrow, and that's what Colby does. He says these crazy and kooky things that he hopes will get a reaction out of people, like when he called Brazil a dump in the post-fight interview that put him on the map at UFC Fight Night 119, or when he made fun of UFC Hall of Famer Matt Hughes after beating Robbie Lawler at UFC on ESPN 5, who was hit by a train and developed a traumatic brain injury.
Hey, let's talk about the lesson we learned tonight. It's a strong lesson that Robbie should have learned from his good buddy Matt Hughes. You stay off the tracks when the train's coming through, Junior.
Or when he called Khabib Nurmagomedov a sheep lover, except he didn't use the word lover. And that's the style of Colby's humor in a nutshell, just saying really offensive things and hoping somebody will react. He's nothing like a pro wrestling heel like Joe Rogan claims. There is no depth to what he says, there's no kind of stated motivation or rhyme or reason. And I have a sneaking suspicion that he's not as far-right Republican as he claims to be either. He was just smart enough to figure out that presenting himself as such would make him polarizing. People who love Trump would love him, and people who hate Trump would hate him. Back in middle school, I knew this kid named Anthony. I'll never forget him. He was easily one of the weirdest people I've ever met in my life. When you talk to him, he'd come across as normal, maybe a little sarcastic, but nothing out of the ordinary. But he would do these perplexing things just for no reason and get suspended from school on a regular basis. I actually think he ended up getting expelled for pulling out a toy in the middle of class and playing with it, except the toy was attached to him. But when other kids would ask ask him why he did what he did, he never seemed to have a good answer. He would just shrug and keep it moving, and eventually I figured out that there was no good answer. He just did it for attention. That was all he wanted at that point in his life, and doing weird stuff like that was the easiest way to get a lot of it all at once. And that's what Colby Covington is. He's the Anthony of the UFC, the kid in class. And it's hard to blame him. By his own admission, he said that he was going to be cut if he didn't do something drastic. Remember, this is what he's actually like in real life.
I mean, I've been training since I was 17, but like, you know, it's just some advice from you truly love it. It's your passion, bro. Yeah, it is, man. You'll find a way. It is. You'll find a way. You put in the extra workouts. You'll do whatever it takes. You work on the boxing, you work on the wrestling, you work on the jiu-jitsu, and you'll find a way. That's what my coaches at Iowa used to always tell me in wrestling. You find a way. Even if, you know, maybe it's not the conventional way, find a way around. Find a shortcut. Find a way to get it done. Yeah. Just believe in yourself. Never stop believing, my brother. Thanks, man. Actually, I appreciate that, man. I don't know. I know you could live your life the way you want, but I think you should show this side of you more, the real humble, like, you know? I know a lot of people see that. That's not what's up. Yeah, but hey, man, it's more likable, I can tell you that much. Yeah, man. Thanks, man. All right, good luck, man. Thanks a lot. God bless you, man. God bless.
I will give him his props when it comes to having the courage to say some of the things that he does, because they open you up to retaliation from other fighters, but I can't exactly call him courageous for how he handles said retaliation when it finally comes. He got boomeranged by Fabricio Verdum and did absolutely nothing, and got attacked by Jorge Masvidal and called the police, allegedly. And I don't fault him for calling the cops. Believe me, he was in danger and he did what he had to do. What gets me is how a lot of MMA fans reacted to it happening. It reminded me of the backlash that Khabib received for jumping out of the cage post UFC 229. A common sentiment was, hey, let me tell you how it works. Before a fight, you say whatever you have to say, but once the fight is over, you look each other in the eyes and shake hands like men, because at the end of the day, you share something special, and at your core, you are brothers. And I find that to be such a weird up your own ass take, because it only seems to apply for these fans when the fighter that they like is suffering the consequences of their own actions. When Conor was throwing the dolly through the window of a bus, it was, what a man. Oh, he's just flying out to protect the pride of his friend. I wish everybody had a friend like that. What a gangster. And yet, when he got jumped in response, it became, wants to fight it. When Colby was talking about how bad of a husband, brother, and father Jorge Masvidal was.
Your children!
Yeah, that's a good one.
Forget about your children, you deadbeat dad, you a deadbeat.
And running around and calling himself the king of Miami, he was just
the coolest.
But when Masvidal retaliated like everybody knew he would because he's actually crazy, Colby all of a sudden became just a regular old citizen in need of protection just like everybody else. And how dare that no good country thug Jorge Masvidal throw a punch outside of the cage? All of a sudden words like assault, felony, improper behavior began to be thrown around on a regular basis. And I'm not at all condoning what Masvidal allegedly did, but it just gave me a lot of clarity for why some fans seem to love Colby Covington so much. I mean, objectively speaking, he's not charismatic, he constantly repeats his lines and reuses them in different interviews, and for somebody to be a fan past simply finding some of his antics amusing, an actual fan, they have to identify with him, they have to see themselves in him, which explains why it's so hard for them to see him in compromising positions, because what they're actually seeing is themselves getting violated and not doing anything about it. They want to believe that you can really live life pushing the line with whoever you want and suffer no consequences. Go make fun of somebody's religion, sure, call them a bad father, call them a loser, make fun of their wife, why not? It's only words. And it breaks their hero fantasy when somebody who acts like that gets punched in the mouth, because it didn't happen under the specific set of circumstances that they decided was morally acceptable. But once the fight is over, it's just a very naive and childish way of looking at things. Just because you think it's unfair to take it there doesn't mean the person taking it there actually cares about what you think. But in a way, that's also part of the appeal. People understand that you're not supposed to be able to behave like that and suffer no consequences, so they look at somebody doing it with an instinctive curiosity, like, how long is he going to be able to keep this up? And whether the fighter in question falls flat on their face or succeeds is a question of how much the public and their opponents play into what they say. If they don't play into it at all, we get this.
Without me in MMA, what's exciting?
Stop
You know,
it.
like, I don't know.
This is, see, I can get behind some of the stuff, and then you say ridiculous crap like this. What are you talking about?
Be honest. Be honest.
What?
If, however, the fighter gets lucky enough to piss a lot of people off and get an opponent like Tyron Woodley, who will get unironically offended and make a moral stand against him, promising that he'll take care of him for the people and then proceed to lose, then that validates the trash talk and gives it a boost in the eyes of the fans, whether it's good or not. Seriously, Tyron Woodley is the best gift that Colby Covington could have gotten, from his terrible rap career to getting knocked out by Jake Paul after tattooing his name on his body. Public embarrassment in Tyron Woodley is a better love story than Twilight. But Colby is just the latest MMA fighter to try this tactic. He's far from the first. We've also had Kevin Lee.
People hit me up on Twitter and blah, 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 saying I'm trying to be like Conor, man. Conor, I ain't trying to be like none of that. If anything, he trying to be like me.
Alexander Hernandez.
I just see myself facing an insecure little lad swinging on a saddle with a pop gun and a feather in his hat.
And a slew of others. Some of it was partially influenced by Conor McGregor, but it all started from Chael Sonnen. Back in 2007, Chael Sonnen was a kind of sort of known fighter in the WEC, a promotion that was later purchased by the UFC, attempting to capture the middleweight championship from Brazilian Paulo Filho. Filho was an interesting fighter. He was primarily a grappler with some decent popularity for the time, mostly because of his look. He was a huge Mike Tyson fan, even getting a face tattoo and having Mike's face tatted on his arm, and did his best to copy the intimidating aura that Prime Tyson possessed. Chael lost by armbar, but won a rematch by decision a year later. However, the rematch was not for the title, as Filho wasn't able to make championship weight, missing the 185-pound limit by 7 pounds. This became a theme in Chael's career. He was always able to get the title fights, but never actually able to capture the title. But getting these fights became his main skill. Once he got into the UFC in 2009, he began to aggressively market himself, and he was smart enough to figure out very quickly that he couldn't really sell his look because he was a normal looking guy, and he couldn't really sell his fighting style because he was primarily a grappler, and that was considered boring, so he became an edgelord.
I'll give you a gift from Brazil, and I'll be glad if you accept this gift, okay?
Well, that's very nice. You guys brought a gift for me? That's wonderful, considering all the tremendous gifts that my country has given you. For example, the internet, which I heard you have.
This is not true. We have the internet in Brazil, especially...
You got it from America. You're welcome. No. You guys are welcome. We created that here. That was very nice of us.
No, this is not true.
You guys no longer have to tap on a log and like write letters into bottles and throw it into the ocean, right? Because that's what you used to do.
I can't read his mind, so I can't tell you exactly why he chose to go that hard on Brazil and Brazilian fighters specifically, but it probably had everything to do with how serious they took representing where they were from. It was a sensitive subject, and Chael exploited it. He was probably kind of mad about losing to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu all the time too. Most of his losses came courtesy of triangle chokes and arm bars. Anderson Silva actually combined the two and beat him with a triangle armbar. But I have to give him props. He built a whole career off of antagonizing people and was able to parlay it into a retirement plan, becoming an MMA media personality. He was so effective, in fact, that John Jones still doesn't like him to this day, and the two fought over 10 years ago. But just like Colby, he had his fair share of run-ins and close calls, and that seems to be the key to becoming a successful edgelord in MMA. Understanding that there will be aggression directed your way, preparing for it, and when it eventually comes, handling it in the best way possible. Eliciting strong emotions can build a career very quickly, but it can destroy it just as fast.
And whatever bravado you think you have or you think you will have, when the guns come out, you find out it's not true. You're scared.
What happened?
This is an actual move. There's a name for this, and it's very common in Brazil. But we were going in traffic, and a guy cut in front of us, and then what they like to do is cut in front of you, slow down, and then you get boxed in, they jump out and rob you. So when the guy swerved over, we were in 3 lanes traffic, there was nobody else on the road. So when the guy cut in front of us, security knew right what was going on. They pulled their gun out. My wife was in the back, and she was sleeping. She was laying down. She had her feet across me, and I woke her up, and I said, and there was an exit right up, and the guy swerved over as quick as he cut in front of us, took the exit, and was gone. Nothing happened at all. But in that moment, you find out when the guns come out, whatever macho-ness you think you're going to have in that situation, you don't have.
This isn't something exclusive to MMA either. In boxing, you have guys like Rolly Romero and Blair the Flair Cobbs. Rolly in particular is great at monetizing his trash talk. He recently got the payday of his life fighting Gervonta Tank Davis when he didn't belong anywhere near the ring with him, and might get another money fight against Ryan Garcia in the near future. And the fact that he got signed to Mayweather Promotions to begin with is a huge accomplishment in and of itself, because as a boxer, he's terrible. He got signed because he was talking trash about getting the better of Ryan Garcia in sparring, an Oscar De La Hoya fighter, and Floyd Mayweather wanted to annoy Oscar. But there is now another devolved new breed of edgelord fighter that I find to be even more cringe than the old one. We'll call them the Stricklord, in honor of Sean Strickland. Remember when Dexter was all the rage on TV and you had all sorts of people claiming to be psychopaths to be cool? Seriously, if TikTok existed back then, it would have been a trend. Oh, I don't know, I'm just so cold. I find it so hard not to manipulate people with my manipulation skills, my super high IQ. Yeah, that's Sean Strickland in a nutshell. The guy should be wearing a fedora at all times.
And yeah, I'm a bully and an asshole, and I like to hurt people. Oh man, no, if I get some in the ring, I'd be very happy.
You mean that?
Oh, I love it, absolutely.
Now compare that to his older interviews.
I like to show my opponents respect before and after the fight, and if that was a decision, I would have sucked it up and took it and shook his hand, but I'm happy I got the W.
And for such a crazy guy, he sure seems to fight in the safest way possible. Seriously, how are you going to talk about your insatiable bloodlust and then proceed to fight behind the softest jab in the world for 5 rounds? If you're going to pretend to be that guy, then at least commit to the character. You want to see real crazy? Now that's crazy. Diego Sanchez is actually out there, and I mean that in the best way possible, because I've been a fan since The Ultimate Fighter 1 when he was the Nightmare. And even back then, the guy was clearly quirky. He'd be meditating in thunderstorms to get the power of electricity and all sorts of weird stuff. As bad as the Josh Fabio situation was, were any people really surprised that it would be Diego who would be a student? For better or for worse, he's really like that. That's what makes him a fighter, that spirit. Sean Strickland doesn't have that. Another example, a much sadder one, John Koppenhaver, War Machine. The guy was clearly off and people could tell immediately. Here's Matt Serra talking about him.
But I'll tell you, mentally, he's definitely got some issues. It was kind of a piece of work, you know. Man, what a nut.
Look him up, see how his story ends. And while you're at it, let me know what you think about this video in the comments down below. Do you agree or disagree? Hit a like if you like the video, dislike if you don't, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. Tell me all about how big my neck is. It's seriously, guys, it's not even that big. It's not that big. I'm sitting weird. See, if I straighten up, it's not that big, right? In conclusion, you can always tell when it's for show and when it's somebody being an edgelord. Is it cringe? 9 out of 10 times, yes. Can I truly blame the fighters that engage in that behavior? Not really. The UFC is not in the business of rewarding you for winning. It's in the business of rewarding you for attracting interest. Demetrius Johnson was one of the greatest champions in the company's history, and nobody cared. Aljamain Sterling might give Dana White an ulcer if he doesn't lose his title to Sean O'Malley, and Bilal Muhammad might actually have to pay the UFC to get a title shot. If you're not selling, then the company could not care less about how good of a fighter you are, and I don't see that changing ever. So until the end of time, we'll get to enjoy stuff like this.
Let's get right to the finish, man. How did you get it done? Pretty special way to end that fight here tonight.
That choke, let me tell you what that is. That's actions that speak louder than words. And the mixed martial arts you once knew, I am no more. I am something completely different. The only fight that matters to me now is the #1 contender spot. I will have the UFC title. I know right now there is not a man in this planet that can stop me inside this octagon, and only politics can slow me. I don't have much left to say other than you have seen nothing yet.